The Lucius Malfoy we meet at the start of the series, and the Lucius Malfoy we leave at the end are barely recognizable as the same person. He begins as one of the most confident, influential men in the wizarding world, someone who walks into a room expecting deference and usually gets it. He ends the series exhausted, frightened, and stripped of nearly everything he once measured his worth by. The books trace that collapse carefully, and the turning point, the single event that starts unraveling everything, happens in the Department of Mysteries. A man who never doubted himself. To understand how far Lucius falls, it helps to remember where he starts. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Lucius is proud, composed, and clearly used to getting his way. He carries himself like someone who has never had to answer to anyone, wealthy, socially untouchable, secure in his status within pure-blood society. He doesn't raise his voice to intimidate people. He doesn't need to. His name and his money do that work for him. That confidence wasn't accidental. Lucius had spent years as one of Voldemort's most trusted followers, someone with real standing inside the Dark Lord's inner circle. Being a Death Eater, for Lucius, wasn't a source of fear, it was a source of leverage, one more form of power, layered on top of the wealth and pure-blood pedigree he already carried. The mission that broke everything. That standing was tested directly in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, when Voldemort assigned Lucius a task meant to prove his value, retrieving the prophecy concerning Harry Potter from the Department of Mysteries. For a man who had spent years cultivating Voldemort's trust from a comfortable distance, this was a chance to demonstrate that trust had been well placed. The mission collapsed. In the battle that followed, the prophecy was destroyed, several Death Eaters were captured or defeated, and Lucius himself was taken into custody by the Ministry of Magic. It wasn't a quiet failure he could explain away later. It happened in front of members of the Order of the Phoenix, and indirectly, in front of Voldemort's own expectations. There was no version of events where Lucius came out of that night looking competent. The consequences reached far beyond a single failed assignment. Voldemort's punishment without end. When Voldemort returned to full power, Lucius discovered that his failure at the Ministry hadn't been forgiven or forgotten. The trust he'd spent years building was gone, replaced by something closer to contempt. Across Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, that shift becomes impossible to miss. Voldemort humiliates him openly. He dismisses Lucius's opinions in front of other Death Eaters. He brings up the failed mission repeatedly, using it as a reminder of exactly how replaceable Lucius had become. Perhaps the clearest symbol of this fall is Malfoy Manor itself. The house had always stood for everything the Malfoy name represented: wealth, influence, generations of pure-blood status. Voldemort took it over almost entirely, turning it into a functioning headquarters for the Death Eaters. He controlled who came and went. He gathered his followers there as though the house belonged to him. Lucius, in his own home, became something closer to a guest than a master, and the message behind that arrangement wasn't subtle. Power that Lucius had once assumed was permanently his had simply been taken from him. From untouchable to afraid. The contrast with the Lucius of Chamber of Secrets is stark. That version of him was proud, commanding, and completely certain of his own importance. The Lucius we see by Deathly Hallows is worn down, visibly frightened, and increasingly desperate. For what may be the first time in his adult life, he understands that none of it, the money, the family name, the social standing, means anything to Voldemort. Ambition, which had defined most of his choices up to that point, gets replaced by something much simpler: fear. That fear ends up changing him in ways his pride never could have. As the war progresses, Lucius drifts further from pure-blood ideology and the political games he'd spent his life playing. His attention narrows down to one thing: keeping Narcissa and Draco alive. What actually mattered? By the time the Battle of Hogwarts arrives, the Malfoys aren't fighting for Voldemort's victory anymore. They're fighting to survive it. Narcissa lies to Voldemort's face, telling him Harry is dead when she knows otherwise, purely because confirming it might buy her a way back to her son. Lucius abandons the battle entirely to go looking for Draco, at a moment when the outcome of the war itself has clearly stopped being his priority. Loyalty to Voldemort, the thing that had shaped his entire adult identity, gets quietly overtaken by something else: loyalty to his family. That's the irony sitting at the center of Lucius Malfoy's arc. He spent decades chasing status, influence, and Voldemort's approval, treating all three as though they were the most important things a person could have. By the end, he understands that none of them were ever what mattered most to him. What mattered was his wife and his son, and what it cost him to realize that too late was almost everything else he'd built his life around. The man left standing at the end of the series isn't the proud Death Eater who once believed completely in Voldemort's ideology. He's a frightened father whose only remaining goal is bringing his family out of the war alive, which may be the most human thing Lucius Malfoy ever does in the entire series.